Good evening, everybody. Welcome to tonight's Governance Committee meeting. Just before we go into the agenda, it's I'll just like, says everybody sign in. If you're not, just sign in. If you can, please. Electronic devices, whatever all of mine on, should be turned off if you're using them, or at least turn on to silent. And members are reminded to observe the Blyth Town Council Code of Conduct.
Before we start, and I want to say this before the last meeting. Apologies. Just want to wish everybody a happy St. George's Day up here at Sid.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right.
Yeah. Done.
Same to you.
Over, Brian. Continuing on, just like to invite Mike Savage to the Slaughter. Sorry, Mike Slaughter. I've written it down, got it wrong. To the tonight's meeting, who will come in, we'll introduce him in later. Okay, so Mike Slaughter. That's it. Everybody happy with that? Moving on to the agenda, item 1. Any apologies for absence, and obviously the rules are on the front page for anybody who wants to give an absence. So any apologies for absence? Yeah, item 2. Has anybody got any disclosures of interests and grant of dispensations? This one is just an voting that yes or no. Item 3. We'll just like this committee to note the minutes of the previous governance committee. The minutes of the meeting held the 6th of January 2026 were approved at the town council meeting held the 15th of January 2026. I would like to pass you over to Malcolm, item 4, for the internal audit presentation, where he will introduce Mike Slaughter.
This is generated just following on from the wishes of members that have expressed previously in, inviting our internal audit. Mike's done the audit for a few years now. Just to the committee, the timing of the presentation is going to be before all the accounts get presented for last year. All the governance statements that we've got to present to Mazars after full council approval. So we've set them up in this order. So Mike's going to give his overview of the work he carries out. And if you've got any questions about that, Mike will take them all on board. As well, Mike will be staying for the next bit, appendix 2, where we'll go through all of the detail. And again, if you've got any queries which are, to myself or Elaine, fine, it could be to Mike as well, because he filled in some of the documents for us. So I'll just hand it over to Mike then.
Thanks very much, Chair, for the invitation to attend tonight. I hope you can all hear me, because I'm not known for having the loudest voice around, but if you can't, or if there's anything, just stop here now. First of all, thanks very much for the opportunity we're determined tonight to meet you all. I presumed, maybe rightly or wrongly, that you don't necessarily have a comprehensive background about the role of internal audits, and I've tried to keep everything really simple, really clear, transparent. I think it's a good word to use on it. And I'm going to talk generally for about 5 or 10 minutes if I'm allowed, unless one of your questions is, please can you stop with it, So basically, I'm Mike Slaughter. I'll tell you a little bit about myself later on, but I'm presuming you'll have questions like, who are you, what do you do, when do you do that, why do you do that, what is your role, who do you work to, etc. And hopefully that'll pop up during the course of the little presentation. But basically, what is an internal audit? An internal audit is an independent, objective process that evaluates and improves an organisation's risk management, its control and its governance practices. It helps to find problems early, checks if rules are followed, and it can give some simple ideas to improve how an organisation works, how it grows, how it stays safe, and how it can reach its objectives and goals. If you want to do your own investigation of that, you'll find that is the general comprehensive role, irrespective of your organisation, a council or a business or any enterprise. The aspect of the work that I undertake on your behalf as the elected council members, I work to you, I report to you, I may work through Malcolm in terms of working with Hannah and Malcolm and the officers here and asking them any questions I'll have. But in essence, you appoint as a council your internal auditor on an annual basis, and my findings are reported directly to yourselves. That's why it forms a key part of the documents you'll have when you consider your annual governance return and accounts. There's two aspects to the work I do. The first one is a compliance, what they call a compliance audit, which largely speaks for itself. And I'll look at things to see whether an organisation is following its own rules, its own plans and policies. And it also helps to make sure that everyone is doing everything in the right way and avoids mistakes, operating laws. And the second part is obviously a financial audit. In the simple terms, that looks at how the organisation handles its money, and that'll check things like the invoices that are paid, the invoices you issue, how you manage your funds, your reserves, and simple things like, are your staff paid correctly? Do they have contracts of employment? Have they been properly appointed? And those kind of issues generally. So it's fairly wide ranging. The first thing to say is an audit isn't optional. And I work in any internal auditor in the public sector works to the accounts and audit regulations. And as a council, you have to undertake an effective internal audit to evaluate the effectiveness of your risk management, your control and governance process, taking into account the public auditing standards and guidance. So when I do the work that I do on behalf of Blythe, I have to work to a document like this. It's not like a single page. There's like 180 pages of what to look for, what to specify for. And the checklist that I prepare for you is not the briefest that's optional. It's the thorough, so it'll cover a whole range of items on the controls and the things I'll undertake. The selection and appointment of an audit provider, you have to ensure that the appointed internal auditor has a relevant knowledge of the public sector. There are two guiding principles that an authority must follow in appointing your internal auditor: independence and competence. It's going to be rich when I talk about my own competence. So when you look at independence, it requires the absence of any actual or perceived conflict of interest. That means that whoever carries out your internal audit role does not have any involvement in or responsibility for financial decision-making, management or control of the authority, or for the authority's financial controls and procedures. There are things for you, through your responsible financial officer, to set and make sure they're thorough. A current or recent authority member who couldn't demonstrate independence could not be an internal auditor. Similarly, it would not be appropriate for any individual or firm with a personal connection to a member or an officer to be appointed. And conflicts of interest must be avoided at all times. So, for instance, if I worked for a software provider who did work on behalf of Blythe Town Council, I could not provide an internal audit service to you when they wanted me to or not, because of the conflict of interest. So that is a really serious matter. And to my knowledge, I have no relationship, platonic or otherwise, with any members of Blythe Town Council, and I can demonstrate clear independence. If I couldn't, the onus is on me to say to you, things have changed. I'm no longer able to undertake the role of internal auditor. The competence issue is there is no requirement for a person providing an internal audit to be professionally qualified. That might surprise some of you, but that's the nature. Competency often is in terms of how you demonstrate your skills, how people observe you, how you present yourself, etc. But there are nevertheless essential competencies that must be sought from any internal audit service. And I'll list them for you. Understanding of basic bookkeeping, that would obviously help, wouldn't it? And accounting processes where an authority exceeds a £200,000 threshold, which you comfortably do. You are, if not the largest, one of the top 2-3 largest town councils in Northumberland. And for a bit of backdrop, there's something like 149 town and parish councils in Northumberland, which some people find surprising. You've got a precept of approaching 1.5 million, and you manage an annual budget of a similar sum together with your reserves balance. So you may have total reserves available to your funding of an excess of 2.9 million. There is an understanding of the role of internal audit in reviewing systems rather than undertaking detailed checks that are more appropriately the responsibility of the management. There's an awareness of the relevant principles and practice of financial and understanding proper practices in relation to governance and accounting requirements, as well as an awareness of the most recent standing orders and model financial regulations, your two key documents in terms of how you manage your general affairs of business. With a little bit of luck, and hopefully you might now have an element of believing that I'm both independent and you might actually think that I know what I'm doing. That would be helpful. I'm not going to ask the chair to take a vote on that, but for what it's worth. But for a little bit of background about myself, I worked in local government and the public sector from 1979 until I retired in 2022. I spent 11 and a half years initially as a training accountant and then a senior accountant at Wansbeck District Council. I moved to Castlemorgan Borough Council, where I did 17 and a half years as a principal accountant, as a principal housing finance officer, and I ended my time there as the deputy head of housing services. And I was appointed, interestingly, somebody might really, I was appointed as the town clerk in RFO to the newly formed Ashington Town Council in 2009 when it was established. And I held that role for 12 and a half years, from being the sole person with his own laptop in a small office to the town hall in Ashington, similar to your own experience, or some of you, if you've been in since the start, from 2009 to where you are now, which some people find fascinating. It's 2026. So those people who preferred it when it was Blythe Valley or Northumberland are a little bit behind the times now. So I did that job right up until I retired in 2022. Coming towards the end for a year, is that it's a matter for you to determine how best to meet the standard requirement for internal audit. There's no requirement for you to rotate, but it's essential that at least on an annual basis, you consider your own internal audit arrangements and who you would like to appoint for internal auditor. But it should be designed to provide sufficient assurance for yourselves that the standards are being met in the work of the internal audit is actually effective. So with regard to your agenda this evening, as Malcolm, the chair, mentioned earlier, I've circulated and completed on your behalf the annual audit for 2025-26. I think that would be the first year of yourselves as a new council. But you've obviously got through the budget setting process for 26-27 when you set your first precept as a new council. My report was circulated. It's there with item 5. It sets out the requirements for the conduct of an effective internal audit. There's a checklist and then a range of controls for everybody to see exactly what I have done, what I'm required to do in order to tick yes, and in order for you to then consider your own governance. And there's a separate annual report that is part of your AGAR submission that I've completed on your behalf. As part of the overall check on the authority's governance arrangements, I do review, and I'm required to review, all your authority and committee minutes and supporting papers to gain an overview of your own direction, your financial and governance controls, and to make sure that there are no actions that are potentially unlawful, however well-intentioned, that are being considered and all decisions have been taken properly approved and properly minuted. And the purpose of the annual governance statement is for the authority to report publicly on its own arrangements and ensure that its business is conducted in accordance with the law, the regulations, and that you properly report to the public with the appropriately represented and are accountable to. And really quickly, what I don't do, what I'm not, doesn't mean I don't, I'm not required to, but it's not the purpose of an internal or external audit to detect or prevent fraud. In saying that, I would say to you that if there was ever anything going through the accounts, and let's say I do something like 75 or 80% of every invoice that passes through Blythe Town Council, with a focus, obviously, on larger items and contract items, whether your procurement processes have been properly adhered to. But if I ever felt there was a need or there was something in there that brings something to the attention, then I would obviously mention that to the responsible financial officer. And depending on what came back, would report to the council. And importantly, I have an obligation and a duty to report that to an external auditor. So the relationship between the internal and external is your external auditor largely carries out a desktop review. They review the documents that you submit when you agree a AGAR, but they place a heavy reliance, as all external auditors do, on the work of the internal auditor to assure them all the appropriate detailed tests have been taken internally. So when that goes forward, if there was anything that I take no to it would likely lead to a qualification of your accounts. What else I don't do? I don't perform any operational duties of the council. I don't initiate or approve accounting transactions. I don't provide financial, legal, or other advice in relation to any future transactions that would actually impinge on independence. I don't do that. I work to the town council. You obviously have to work through your RFO and all these staff. That's why at the bottom of every letter, I always thank the clerk and the staff for the pest I've been for the days I'm here and asking for papers, asking for documents that they're all obligated to provide. And if the council employees did not provide those documents, I would report that to you. I would say I don't be able to carry out this test because for some reason there was an unwillingness. That's not the case here. It's always been very open. And I would take the opportunity not to blow smoke in this direction, but to say, to commend you as a council that you have a very robust approach and you have a prudent management of your finances. How you use them is not the matter for me. It's not even something I'm asking for. That is for you to set your direction of the budget in the same way as the previous council did. That is your responsibility. It's not part of what I do, unless, as I said earlier, there was something in there that was, you need to have a double check on this because that is the function of a county council. So towns and parishes work to a specific set of duties and responsibilities. And it is not my role either to complete either section 1 or section 2, although most councils would say internal audit, and you cast your eye over section 2 of our ERGAR, which that was my view as a clerk. Section 2 of the ERGAR of your accounts isn't particularly massively transparent. It actually said what was the cost of your staff, what were all your other costs. The detail lies behind that. So the budget documents that you receive on a regular basis, the large, you have a wide range of budget of your governance committee, your environment committee. That's where the detail lies. That's why when I check your website, I do that here and I do it at home often, just to have a look at the budget reports. It's important that those budget reports go onto your website, because that's likely where members of the public will get a detail, they'll get the behind the scenes stories, and that's where you should direct them to. And again, I've ticked yes, because all of that documentation is on your website, and you do get regular budget reports. And that, ladies and gentlemen, members, is my, I hope it's been helpful, just to give you a little bit of background. I've actually obviously looked at all the matters in your internal audit. Your staff have always been extremely helpful in terms of documents and putting the time aside. Whatever you choose to do in terms of who you appoint, that wasn't about me. That's about your role and what you should be looking for in an internal audit. Okay, so thanks very much, Chair. So if anybody has any questions or anything general, I'm happy to take them now or to take them as part of the internal audit report in the agenda. So thank you again, Chair.
Yeah, and thank you very much for that. And I would just like to say we're going to go into like any figures that we've got or any questions that we've got later on. But we requested this in a previous governance meeting, so it's now open. If anybody wants to ask like any questions at this stage, or if you want to leave them at the relevant points that we'll put in our presentation. But if you do want to ask, if you could just introduce yourself as who you are, what you represent, and you're allowed to help along. So is there any questions?
Yeah, sorry, I was waiting for your announcements, that's all.
Yeah, sorry, if you just introduce us.
Yeah, Councillor Brian Erskine, Cooking Board, one of the town councillors. I'm just looking at estimate reserve over the next 6 years against the earmarked reserve. Never couldn't say that. Is that dead accurate? Do you see that yourself?
Do I see your
That's
the report that you've got tonight in front of you in terms of I see that when it arrives on your website. I don't have any part of that, but I've got to say I obviously am aware of all those figures.
Yeah.
And in the interim report, one of the items that was coming up, because that document there gets reviewed every week. It's every year. It's called the Smaller Authorities Practices Panel, and it's an evolving document. So in last year, there was a new criteria recommendation came in that said, we're an authority, a small town, a town, call it smaller authority, it's not disrespectful, it's just comparative with Northumberland. People say, if you hold less than 3 months or more than 3 months of overall reserves, that's not here, that's overall reserves, then you have to report to the external auditor as part of the documents. What are your plans in terms of your reserves? That's why I would always say to people, look, and I'll be honest, I did this to more with the town council. I spoke to Martin about it and put it in the interim report. Before the turn of the year of the submission, you will be required this year to explain to the external auditor what are your plans for your reserves. And the reason they do that is because there shouldn't be anything that would happen in this authority that you haven't either risk managed or insured against. And if I say to somebody, what could potentially happen that would require £684,000 worth of reserves to be used up?
Could I just come in there and sorry if I'm interrupted, but could we try and ask the questions on item 4?
That's
And it's a very good question, Brian, but could we try and bring it into item 5, like 1, 2, to the relevant points of that?
Could I ask if you just finish what you're saying?
Yeah,
That's all right.
just to come on, just on item 4 was more questions on his presentation of.
Right,
Then we'll put to them specific, which are good questions, Brian.
Can you finish this? All right.
Can I continue on? Yes, finish it
I'll
up.
finish that like really quickly in terms of that. As the auditor, I'm saying it's your obligation to have to report both to the full council and to the external auditor. What are your plans for your reserves? That's not detail. That's simply saying what is the level of earmark reserves. And if it was me, I'd be saying you're holding balances of 684,000 that are, nearly half the 70%. Do you have planned for the use of those reserves? And yes, we've got a lot of earmark reserves because we've got planned reserves for asset replacement and everything else. And again, it's the council's decision to say, how do you use your reserve balance? How do you move forward? But the detail of that is not for me to do. It's simply saying you have to be aware you'll be asked that question.
I appreciate that. Sorry if I went off. So
That's no, I didn't want to like interrupt, but I'll just bring it up.
No, thanks.
If I just conclude, let's say if any members, after I say this, but if any members have got any questions on the principle of what Meg does as a theory, or if I can just close this one, what Meg said about the external auditor and things like this, there is a balance there. There is a reserve of 1.18. But the report actually tells you that it might be 1.18 as a headline, but it actually comes down to 226, which we'll explain later. But when Mike says about the value of balances, it is a requirement. If our figures go from that to that 1 year, the auditor wants the details of why it's gone from that percentage to that percentage. Now, on reserves, we are well within comment of the external auditor about why we've got that value, and they will not ask us about why we've got that value, because it is reasonable for this side of this authority to have. So we've already satisfied that on a future return that will be sending after the accounts have been agreed in May. But we're well catered for them.
Thank you. Any more questions on item 4 of these the internal audit presentation?
On the presentation, it's very good, and I'd like to thank you, to everybody. Thank you for your services.
Yeah. Anybody else? Okay, move on to item 5. So item 5, decision report, item 5.1, outturn for 2025-26. I don't know if you've got the vertical pages or the horizontal ones, but they should all have the same information. The recommendation that we're looking for this committee to resolve is item 1. Do I need to read it, or has everybody read it? And item 2. And then we'll go into questions afterwards of relevant people. But are you happy that what we're trying to see to resolve the item this committee? Item 1, item 2. Any questions to anybody on the information in that? the members to please, and then
Yeah, Commissioner, so, councillor. You know, the report does show, you know, that there are signs, you know, of improvement compared to the expectations. But you know, is it possible that I could suggest that we have sort of a clearer reserves use strategy? You know, for the £1.18 million balance. That's just, you know, so that there's more transparency to the residents on how the financial resilience would benefit the community, rather than them just wondering why we're sitting on 1.18 million. The other thing is the investment transparency. I noticed that you've got you know, this 500k market investment, you know, property. Could it be possible that for future, we get in the future some financial updates which include a simple performance and risk summary regarding that investment, and just to give members of the public and ourselves confidence that that is still the way that we need to be, you know, looking and investing, because obviously with you know, it does mention in the report volatility at the minute and what we're having, but it doesn't actually give any sort of performance or risk to us.
yeah, I think them points these we've covered in other meetings. I think they're very relevant at this one, because members of the public are looking at why we've got such a high reserve that might not understand it. And to be honest, talking to Malcolm before, it does sometimes take a lot of like, we end up to understand why it's so high, because you're trying to predict the next 2 or 3 or 4 years. I think the council of Malcolm correct is going a possible increase of no more than 4%. We're trying to predict no more than 1% council tax. So there are good points. If I could ask you all about, we might feel them help you about it as well. And then it'll be great, then you'll find.
So you're just going to carry on there, Chair.
I can't, you want, I kind of go on, I did the training session, that was good.
On, and I say the figures we can't change because they are from the accounts. On what Councillor Nicholson's just said there, we can, no problem at all, give a fuller explanation, and we'll start that as governance report when we continue to, you know, talk about balances and what have you. We will have the opportunity as well to put something out after the minutes, which we could do. You know, just on the website, on Facebook, linking it back, where we'll give a little bit more about the strategy that's on the graph. Because the figures on the graph is you know, we touched when we did the financial training session. We are at the minute for the next 5-6 years, we are projecting a 4% inflation. It could be a lot higher with, you know, certain things happening in the world. So we are projecting a 4% increase on our budget if the strategy, if our priorities stay the same. But what we're doing is this budget, the graph against the budget and the precept only anticipates a 1% increase in council tax. That might change as well. If inflation goes to 8%, you might want to look at increasing it by more than 1. So we can't give a fuller explanation there. On the other point you made, we had planned, and it's on my whiteboard, to do a new strategy for the medium-term financial resources of the council. We do have the 500,000 sitting in a property fund, which is a recommendation that town and parishes use. It is what it says. It is a property fund. We invest in companies that rent out property. We do have £500,000 in there. It's below the 500 at the minute, but come next month it could be way above. The advantage of the fund, I've had it for years and years since the council first started. It does give a good investment return. You'll see as part of your council, we get over 50,000 by the various investments that we do, and that's part of it, which is a good return. The strategy that we'll put up hopefully to the next governance committee, will be giving you more detail about that fund and saying, do you want to leave it in that fund? Or do you want to put it in a safer investment market where you might get a lot less as a return, but the 500 will be 500, it'll be 520, and so on. So it'll always increase as opposed to the possibility of getting higher returns, but it might fluctuate up and down to 500. So that's something that we'll get in. Hopefully it'll satisfy what your questions there and other members might be thinking.
Okay.
What we'll do then.
Before we want to really happy with that, please, yeah, yeah, good. Rick,
Yeah, I wasn't putting my hand up. So
all right,
we'll go to the next person.
Brian,
Yeah, Chair. I mean, I've been quite vocal on this with the amount we have underspent in the reserve. And I would like to see what the options were to freezing the precept for a year or maybe possibly two. Because of the situation we're finding people, the council tax is rising high, people are struggling, and we're the forefront of the council, what the people say is Blythetown Council in this town. I think we should be doing it. I know it's not, in essence, you know, the council will say it's not a lot, but I think we should be seeing that we're trying to help people. And it's something that we've discussed in the past, Malcolm. But I think we've got to be foreseeing helping the people. I mean, this is what we're here for, helping the people. And I think looking at maybe freezing it for a year or two, I think that's something we should do. I mean, what's the options on that?
just, we want, you look for. Forget about that.
The council tax hasn't risen. In fact, this year it came down. So the last increase in council tax was 2 and a bit financial years ago. To not increase the precept means that the reserve difference gets closer and closer all the time, and it gives you less flexibility to spend on other projects. For example, some big projects that we're looking at the moment is the all-inclusive play areas and the sand provisions. You know, if we need to spend above the budget, these graphs will show, you know, the difference between what we've got and what we need. If you don't increase the council tax, those differences get smaller and smaller every year. And it doesn't give you the scope to do anything more than what you do in the existing budget. Unless you cut other services which you are providing in the town. I mean, that would be a decision for the council to take.
I mean, even if we said 1 year, I mean, the difference in budget is 64k. I think if the 64k of the reserve isn't going to harm, but it shows dedication to the people of this town that we are thinking about them in hard times. We are considering and we are representing them in this town council. I don't see what 64k, okay, if it says it was double that, 120k was reserve, just to show that the people, we are in solidarity with them and that we are representing them in the right actions and manners of helping them, even if it's 1 year, of freezing the precept.
Well, we've only got, if you like, over the next 5 years, a total of £226,000 to be flexible with. So immediately, if that example there was 120, it means that we've only got 100,000 over the next 5 years to contribute to, you know, improving the town, you know, whether it be grass cutting, whether it be play provision. And this is the scenario that you'll find yourself.
I'm just coming for an hour. Since 2013 at least, I didn't like the same underspend in the council at all. Because when you've got like an underspend of 28 grand on community, or you've got 9 grand.
Yeah. I mean, if you look, I mean, what community? Sorry, I thought you finished. Apologies.
The public out there and say, hold on a minute, my grass hasn't been cut. I've got another £1,000 for the youth club.
Yeah.
Why we've got an underspend, but we've discussed this on this underspend.
Yeah.
And bear in mind, if we go back to a meeting that we had, it was me pushing I went against my own party with the vote to get that insurance, so releasing that 250 grand or thereabouts into these reserves.
Yeah, we sat there, we
Yeah.
voted together.
So had they not done, so it is a one of like an understanding that the officers in the council, I believe, to my level of understanding, have got to keep this reserve. Although it looks massive, it looks huge.
Yeah.
If the 4% increase, oil, fuel, whatever world event could affect the council, it could bring it down to a risk factor. So you're right what you say, it will be ideal in the real world that there's no underspend, that we'll spend what we predict.
Yeah.
But sometimes circumstances, nothing in the county council not allowed it, and other things, councils have spent £1,000. Why? Everything didn't get through, but I think what they're gonna do is attach it where it doesn't go back in the advances. All right, the amount, so although the public's missed out on possibly £61,000 in last year, I think we're gonna make sure that's available on top of. So for example, you had £2,000 last year to spend in your ward. If you've only spent 1,000, he's gonna give you 3,000 this year, I believe, if you could just say.
I would like to see, man, if we could do that for the sake, just sake of the people. I mean, Coopen being the most deprived ward in the whole of Northumberland, and that's a fact. That's not just me saying stuff.
I think it's being used as another indices of national deprivation. Okay.
We're splitting hairs here. But the thing is, I just think 1 year. What's 1 year? You know what I mean? Even if it's a bit of relief for the people, and I don't see that. You know, there's people struggling out there. There's people going to food banks. And if we can help people just for 1 year, it's what 1 year help for the community of Blythe.
I think one second, do you want to answer that? Because I give it a very good point, and I'm not just saying it, you know, it's a good point, but I think there's a fine line between how we make that decision, how we're doing it, but.
Yeah, I think it's good that you can kind of agree in principle that you would like to look at something, and if you can, not increase the council tax. I mean, that would be great. It would be great if all your shops on the high street didn't pay price increases as well. So I think as a council, it would be good to say that, you know, would like to do it, but I think you've got to wait until December, January, when you've gone through all the committee budgets, and we'll sit here, you know, first, second week in January as a council saying, these are the hard facts, because a lot can change in 10 months. An awful lot can change. I mean, this graph might be upside down in 10 months, for all we know. So I think it's a nice thing to do, nice thing to think of, but I think the harsh reality will come in 10 months' time when you've got some revised figures, and you think, well, if we do that, it means we've got to cut services.
In fact,
Close on
that, if I'm moving to give them a, Brian, I agree with it, like I say, my understanding years ago was exactly the same. But if we could get anybody from the public, whether it be Coopen News or anywhere, and explain certainly the training I hadn't understand I've got it now. Bear in mind I was in the council 4 years, and I'll admit I didn't have a full understanding of it. I would argue with council, I would argue on emails, get the reserve spent, so just a ponder book.
No, look, I understand what it was, but I mean, if we've got to spend 800,000 in the next year, I'll think it down to the recommended reserves. There's something seriously gone wrong as a council. We've never done that.
I didn't pick up that. So.
With the actual reserves and the recommended, yes, is it 800,000 different, isn't it? Give or take, just under.
That's for this year, but if you see it, you've got to look at it over a 5-year, 6-year period, and you've got to look at the end year.
But when you're talking 1 year.
No, but whatever you do in the first year has a dramatic effect on the end year.
Right.
So if you spend, you know, if I've got, you know, a couple of £100 in your wallet, and that's got to last us for the week. If I decide to spend £100 of it now, it affects what I've got at the end of the week.
Yeah.
And that's exactly the same with the council reserves. If you spend £200,000 this year, it greatly affects all the green lines, the top lines all the way down.
They're all great to me, I can't see
Well,
whatever.
Well, what it would mean is if you spend £200,000 now in freezing council tax and, you know, and spending it on whatever you want to spend on as a council, it'll mean that in 2000, at the end of 2031, your level of reserves will be the minimum that the government say you've got to have, and you won't have any flexibility on spending anything above what you've got in the budget unless you start putting in service.
So if we froze it this year, the precept for the next, you'll see
Which what I've done.
there's no need to sign over with them that.
And I'll just continue and we'll have to finish off, right, yeah.
So you're saying it would massively affect in 5 years' time?
You'll not know, this is what I'm saying, they've put a safety margin in here for what I can see is that catering for a possible 4% increase, but when we just don't know, like Martin said.
Well, that's what
A world event could
I would
take
like-
all this and turn it upside down.
Well, that's what I'm proposing, and I've
Yeah.
been quite vocal in that. And it, you know, people are struggling in this town. You know, it's, you know,
Right, propose that you've got to have a second, I think, but I mean, it's nothing that we can determine tonight. You can say would like to, but.
but it's not, I haven't spoken to you about already, Mark.
No, and I have agreed that, I mean, you know, you need a seconder. And then it would have to come to council, which I'd intended to put up on the agenda, because this isn't, I mean, it's not on the agenda, to put up for the town meeting, for the annual meeting. I mean, that's what I did.
Yeah.
Did say in previous emails. But if you're suggesting that now, you know, it's a proposal. You'll have somebody to second it.
So can you be clear what the proposal is, Brian, please? Just
I would like to see at least 1 year that we
So you,
look at possibility, or look at, if not do it, look at it, or see what we can do to help the people of this town out.
sorry, what's
As in freezing the precept, is that?
But that's something that we do every year, and we did it 2 years ago. We didn't increase the council
I know,
tax.
but we didn't guarantee that. That was something that actually came out of our power.
No, 2 years ago, the
Oh,
council.
2 years ago, sorry, I thought you meant this year.
No, we could have increased the council tax to what we want this year.
Yeah.
But we decided to keep it at a level which was affordable. And then the county council, which the county council members will do, or the council tax, you know, base the benefit system. The changes that happened at the county in January, what's happening, that in effect increased the number of properties within the town, the Band-Aid properties. And by increasing the denominator, the figure on the bottom, it then allowed the council tax to be lower. And that's what we've done. So we've had 2 years, we've had 1 year of no increase, and this year it came down a few pence, I think. But it's something that we always consider. And in January, when you get the report about the suggested council tax, the increase to Band-D, it's to work with the model of looking 5 years ahead, not 1 year ahead, about where the council would be if we did this, that and the other. So we always give a steer, because in the governance, I can't remember if it was the governance or the council meeting in January, I said, there was 3 lines for each year. I said, this is what the reserves are with X% increase. This is if we don't increase not the reserve, the council tax. And it showed us that would be in trouble in year 5. Members may recall that graph, and I did.
right, I'll just,
So it's all considered.
do you want to continue with the proposal, Brian, and just be clear what the proposal is right now?
Well, how about we freeze it, or look at the possibility of how we could freeze it to try and help the people of this town.
So, then we will be saying.
I think you've got to go for that. So that's all I'm saying.
David, cool.
Yeah.
David, you're next, yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. I remember previous council, they had a self-insurance, so there was money in reserves for insurance problems if any occurred. And when we decided we would go with an insurer for our assets, that left a little bit leeway, in my reserves. I'd like to say, the following years, we won't need such a big reserve because we're going with an insurance company now. And I'll get on to the council tax. When it went up, it was just the price of a cup of coffee, actually, on planned days, if I remember. Which I don't suppose that would hurt a lot of people in Blythe, So, can't see how freezing the council tax would do anything really, because what we did on this one was really successful.
I think if I can come in again and just bring the two together, nobody can predict, certainly in this volatile world, what's going to happen next week, next month, or whatever. And I think it's better to have, my opinion, a strong reserve based on a 5-year or 6-year plan than not one.
No,
And to be honest, Brian, like the council tax increase, decrease, or freezing, as Mark said, it hasn't gone up this year. It's not like it rise more than
I
one.
just wanted it to guarantee that so we help people, that's all.
Aye, yeah, absolutely. But I mean, we'll go, David, thanks for that.
And you,
Deirdre. Awesome. It was.
Oh, sorry.
It was.
I mean,
David, then you.
in an ideal world, it would be wonderful if we didn't have to pay tax, if people didn't have to pay tax at all. Look, what you gain on swings, you lose on the roundabouts. I get it. People complain out there every day that the services aren't even good enough as they are. And if we start getting to a situation where we have to cut it, it might be a nice gesture for to do that for a year, but most people wouldn't even notice the difference. That's the thing, and they wouldn't even thank you for it in another hand, but they would complain if the services were cut, big style. I mean, just grass cutting and everything like that. The weeds, as soon as the weeds start, you've got to have, and reserves are there for a reason. And the world we're living in at this moment in time, we don't know what's going to happen next week. That will certainly affect councils. You see, the cost of diesel and petrol and everything is starting to go through the roof. And there's no limit on it. We don't know where anything's going to head. So, it's fine. It's a nice gesture, but it's not a practical one, in my opinion.
Thank you. I'll put David Johnson will make this the last one on this subject, and we'll move to the proposal. David?
The proposal that we freeze the council tax is it's good in theory, but for those people who are on the bottom of the scale and their income is very low, wherever there's an increase in the council tax, they are subsidised through benefit systems to increase their. It's the middle people who tend to be the ones who are hardest hit, and in reality, can't see how like the price of a cup of coffee is going to make any difference to those people at all, because there's other things which are in the great whatever's going on. It's affecting them far more than that. Things like the increase in car tax, the increase in energy costs. All these things are the things which are really hurting people, and we've got no control over those whatsoever. So sort of knocking down, say, the council tax by, say, £2 a month, it's just going to be swallowed up by everything else that's being brought in by government intervention on other things. So, I don't really think it'll make a hair of a difference. People look at the big picture, not the little picture. It's the way their money's going. When I'm concerned about what I want to spend my money on, I don't look at the council tax. I look at the petrol bill, which has now gone from, obviously, the diesel bill, which has gone from £60 a month to £93 a month. Not the cost of me council tax, which has gone from like, I can't remember what it is, but it's gone up by £6, so it's not a lot.
Thanks for that, David. I said we were the last one. Denise, definitely the last one on this one. We'll move to the proposal.
Just to correct something David
Yeah.
said, it's not £2 a month, So about £2 something a year, it's about 20 pence.
No,
It is small, yeah.
It is very small.
Great, just moving on. Brian, it's proposal. Yeah, I'm just gonna say, does anybody second it? So basically, it's asking, can we look to increase the council tax for 1 year to help the public out? Is there a second?
I'll second the chair.
Yeah,
I'd also like a name vote on this as well.
then we'll go to those in favour of the proposal. Show your hands. So, those against. Yeah,
And you have done that as a name vote, is it?
yeah, that's fine, yeah.
Can I just clarify, is Adrian, was that hand up or abstaining?
Yeah.
Great, so, yeah, we're moving on to item 2, 5, yeah, sorry, go back. So I'm gonna just let me know. That recommendation, yeah, is that all? Wait, that I'm included on.
So it just, what was the difference in the vote? As in, how many voted to, obviously 2 voted for,
1 abstained.
1 abstained, how many was against? Everybody else?
Eight against.
8 against. Yep.
Liam,
Thanks very much, everybody. I'm sure the people at large appreciate it.
Chair,
can
this vote here, it's a vote in this room for now, before it comes out. Now, Facebook's very dangerous. Gotta watch what we're doing on Facebook. So everything should be done through the council. The website.
I think it's free speech. Is,
Second that.
I agree.
well, yeah, but it's a right free speech. That's why I'm part of the free speech union. Put it.
No, no.
Great, so,
Yeah.
right, so I'm gonna put the committee, so we'll go back to the recommendation, we'll ask this committee to resolve to 1. Confirm the draft financial situation following the completion of the accounts for 25-26 for council to approve. Could any changes be required? E.g., following receipt of year-end investment certificate, then the draft accounts will be adjusted for approval at council. And 2, to agree the carried forward financial commitments to be finalised in 26-27. 3, previously funded initiatives and committee decisions, which will subsequently, I can say, revise the initial budget set of 1590373 of council on the 15th of January 26. This increase is in the order of 61,391 and does not affect the medium-term plan. Can this committee resolve to agree with those 2 things?
Great.
Right, moving on to item 5.2. The annual governance and accountability return 25-26. The recommendation will be that this committee resolves to approve the documents listed in connection with the annual governance and accountability return, which are 25-26, prior to approval by the council before submission to the external auditor. Any questions on the notes that follow that? Item 2. Any questions on that?
Do we need to, and I know it's in the report, but do we need to just highlight that this is in draft form at the moment? The total income includes an estimated amount for the final receipt we received from the investment account we've estimated that at £5,000. We won't receive the actual figure until the end of the month, which could be 5,200 there or thereabouts. So the figure will slightly adjust before it comes back to council and just to highlight.
Sorry, Chair, can I just be excused for 2 minutes?
Anything, yeah.
Asterisk and make a note or something, that's fine.
It is highlighted within the report, but I'm just not to emphasise that the figure will ever slightly change when it comes back to council for a vote.
Right, so David just comes, David. Right, so moving on to item 2.1, council's internal auditors report. Has everybody read that? Got any comments on that?
Page of that.
It is.
That one. So.
It's the third page after the graphs. After the graph.
Ah, sorry.
Yes, it's a letter addressed to me.
Right, I did read this.
Right.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, probably.
Right.
Any comments on that report?
Yeah, previously said it's a very good report.
Yeah.
I thank Meg Slaughter for and the clerk and staff. Oliver and everything.
Voted to it, thank you. Moving on to item 5.2.2, annual internal audit report for 25-26. Page 3 of 6. It's up on the pieces. I think about it. I think you will see if this one's good.
The governance statement's on page 4 of 6. I get any.
Yeah.
I'm on that annual internal audit report. Is that page 3? Yeah. Will we do that one?
No, I don't want to see that.
Item 2.2.3, which is page 4 of 6. Have a minute look at that.
Page 4 of 6. Page 4 of 6.
It's the one page 4, it's
I don't think the same use thing will get the votes for the next week. Because I'm gonna buy this one. Yeah, page, it's got page 3 and 6 right next bottom, 4 of 6.
Section 1.
Four things, yeah.
25 cents. Sorry. The heading is section 1, annual governance statement.
Yeah, just wait a second, 4 of 6, there's another page.
Or 4 of.
4 of 6,
of,
yeah.
I just got myself on, sorry, that's all. Appreciate it, thank you.
Moving on to item 2.1B, accounting statements for 25-26, page 5 of 6.
That's paid.
Do that, so we'll go back to,
I'll take 6 of 6 as
uh,
left blank on purpose. Because it's just say 5 of 6 and there's not 6 of 6.
Yeah.
Clarify 6 and 6, which is the page of the external audit that completes. Just when I was merging it all, I apologise, I merged it in a really bad order. But I didn't include that page because there isn't actually anything on it at the moment.
Yeah, that's the process.
Okay, just make sure you're
Pages. Once you the doing this that you reckon as full council meeting has to formally approve these documents, and once they're done, they'll go to the external auditor. You publish the ones on your website with the public rights, inviting people to documents.
Yeah.
The external auditor will then consider the ask of staff for a whole range of supporting documents.
Yeah.
Like why is the variances in the and then your external auditor will respond by the 30th of September.
Absolutely.
By that stage, page 6 will be completed.
Appreciate that, thank you.
Just before I go into recommendation, Mark wants the word on, Ian.
Yeah, it's on the accounting statement. Page 5 or 6. We have talked a lot tonight about the balances at 1.14 million. You'll see on line 7. There's actually balance carried forward of 684,000. The reason there's a difference of 500,000, believe it or not, is because the capital investment in the property fund doesn't come into that figure as a cash asset or a financial asset. It comes further down in the equation in line 9. So if you're looking for the 1.184, it's line 7 plus part of the 2.775.
Chair, could I just say that when I talked about your 684,000 pound reserves earlier, I was aware that there was a 500,000 pound long-term investment. So the combined figure is the difference. That's the 1.8. But I also said to you that that document there that you approve as your account statements, if you were reading that as a member of the public, it's not overtly helpful. It's not, it's just, you know, this is what we've spent on staff. This is what we've spent on other payments. It could be all manner of things in there. That's why I'm saying if you're ever asked as you refer people to the supporting documents, Richard, that gives you far more detail about what you spend. But again, this is the same for every town in parish council. And some of those decisions in there, you address them through, you know, for instance, I'm not directing you, I'm simply saying, I'll look at what your reserves policy is. Has that changed over the year? When did you last review it? It's those things that impact, but that is an actual factual statement as of the 31st of March, 2026. So, and it's, I've never found that helpful because the other line actually says total fixed assets plus your long-term investments. So if anybody was to say to you, what's the value of your fixed assets at the 31st of March? You take that bottom line, we never knock 500,000 off it. It's not, you know, they're two completely different things, but unfortunately, your RFO and your clerk is, you know, that your officers are directed by what they have to put into the boxes. So just complicates, man.
Yeah, I've just had a question. It's for the whoever, the clerks or the you know, you know, it's been mentioned. We don't know how volatile the world can be. You know, as it has been. With that 500,000, if we needed to in an emergency state, could we tap into that?
Yeah, there's a period where we'd have to tell what you call a CCLA.
Mm-hmm.
I go along with charities, churches, and local authorities. But there is a period, notice period, where you can't get your money back, and it is something which I mentioned earlier on in the meeting when Councillor Nicholson said something. We will be bringing back for you to consider another medium-term financial plan strategy. And that will involve, what do you do with the 500,000? Do you leave it in a very high yield fund, such as this property market, or do you put it into a safer fund where you get a lot less return on the investment? So that will be to a future governance scheme. So we can't get the money, but at the moment, you know, it can just sit there because environment, you like cash. We've got about 600,000 from cash that's available to us in the short term.
Do we get presented that as a council? Is it yearly, annually, or monthly, or?
Well, it's always within the accounts, but as I said earlier, we will be putting a more fuller description as Denise proposed. We will be including that in every governance report about what the 500,000 we're sitting at in what investment we're getting. So that's what we'll be doing.
I will just say to move on before we go to get the committee with the recommendation, that I think the officers and this council have given a really good, secure way forward. I think we didn't increase the council tax this year to the people of Blyth, and didn't increase it at all. And I think we'll go forward with more security than I've ever seen in the council. I'd just like to thank everybody involved for having won that position, because this volatile world, which I've mentioned a few times now, nobody knows what's going to happen tomorrow or the next day, but we are kind of ready for it. And I think if any member of the public on Facebook, haters or anywhere, questions council tax or anything like that, we'll give them the real answer that we'll sit with a high reserve that's going to take us through the next 5 years, where we're looking not to increase the council tax year on year by any more than 1%, if any, we don't know. And based on a 4%, 5%, cost of living or cost of whatever. And I think it's a very secure way of going forward. So I'd like to thank everybody now before for the recommendations, so come to item 2. No more questions?
Okay, question.
Last one, beautiful kind of
Right, okay, I've got Brian here who's arguing that we have increased council tax and we lost some of that. You're saying we haven't increased the council tax yet. So what exactly has happened?
In. Yes, right. When we set the budget for this financial year, we had anticipated to keep the reserves at a healthy level for the end of the decade. We had proposed an increase of 2%, which would have been just over £2 a year, as was pointed out. That didn't actually materialise because the council were happy with the print set that they had set. They wanted to bring in 1.5 million or whatever it was. There was a readjustment at the county council. We submitted our form for 1.5 million, which ended up being a reduction, as we knew, in the council tax.
So the council tax has actually gone down.
So the council tax bills that you've all received this year reflects a lower band A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, whatever property you live in, than what you received in 2025-26. In 2024-25, sorry, in 2025-26, this council agreed that they would not increase the council tax. So the last council tax increase was actually 3 bills ago. And that one went up by 1.99% across all banded properties.
Oh, so how much did it actually come down?
For a banded property, Elaine's going to correct us, but it was only pennies. I don't think it was in the
For a banded property, we'd originally predicted an increase of £2.71 per year. When the council tax support scheme changed, that meant a 0.12% decrease. For a band A property, we predicted £1.81 increase per year. When it changed, it went to 0.07, minus 0.07 pence.
So we've actually had a council tax reduction, but not an increase. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
The town council element has reduced, the county council element, the police and crime commissioner has increased.
Yeah, it's the public council, but our town council
Reduction.
has gone down.
We did put a 4% in, but because of circumstances and county.
No. Right, so the council have never increased the council tax in all my years here by more than 2%.
So how much did we?
Last one, Adrian, and we'll move on. Yeah.
Well, in saying that, we can, as a council, we can pat ourselves on the back and make it known to the public out there that the council tax here has been reduced.
Yes.
County council, it's run by a different group of people. They've increased it. So if there's an increase in the council tax, which they probably had to because of circumstances, but county council tax has gone up, like town councils come down.
Correct.
It's as simple as that. And that needs to be made clear in any statements that go out.
Yes.
So it complain at NCC, not big
If it's trying to comply.
No, it was just what Adrian was on about.
So-
It was just saying big increase was the labour PCC.
I think to be honest, the question going back to Dave answer is why town council didn't increase the council.
Yes.
Which is good.
Let's go to, yeah, county council did,
Yes.
there's two different factions here. We're not here to talk about the county council one tonight. Okay, or shouldn't be. So moving on, can we, get the committee to agree the recommendation? That, is everybody ready?
Yes.
Thank you very much for that.
Michael leave just in case you get a bit hostile.
No, he's straight up on me, whatever.
Yes, won't be burning.
No.
Would you like to come back and see what the decision is or not? Or you mean? It's up to you.
Have to get it flat.
Take your time, consider all the factors.
Right, moving on to item 3, the appointment of the internal auditor 26-27. The recommendation is, the governance committee tonight recommended the council to confirm the appointment of Mike Slaughter, not Mike Savage. And I had it written down here, so I apologise again. I'll apologise another fella. As internal auditor for the financial year 26-27. If I could just say, I reiterated what you said twice, David, I think what, we're a secure council based on officers. Mike's checked it, he's given his report, and I would certainly recommend that we'll carry on with him, look no further, but we'll open it up to the floor. Do we go with the recommendation, or do you want to talk about it or debate it?
Just go with the recommendation.
I've got the recommendation. Oh,
So that's
Yeah.
I mean, I'm happy, you know, he's a very experienced officer, around the town council. You know, there are times he will ask and challenge and you know, he isn't there just to agree with us. You know, he'd say, well, why are you doing this? And you'll be, you know, he does probe and ask the question, so.
If it works well, why change it?
Before we move on to the date and time, sorry, that's it, date and time of next meeting. The next meeting of the governance committee will be held in the council chamber. Here on the 9th of July, 26 at 6:30. Before we close the meeting, on a very rest of the day, St. George's Day. And you're proud of it, yeah.
Thank you very much.